Hi, everybody. I can't say good morning or good afternoon or anything like that because we don't actually know what time it is wherever. But we are here today to talk about being the mentor you wish you had. Do you want to go back one, Kristen, if you
Yes,
can?
sorry about that.
I know you're trying,
Ah,
or forward, whatever. We had not planned to talk a lot about UCAN, the Utah Coaching Advancement Network, but it is an internal program we have that provides coaching coaching programs for early, mid, and late career faculty members. And we also do mentor training workshops and coaching training workshops. So that's us in a nutshell. We are delighted to be here. I'm an anesthesiologist. Kristen is a
neuro
pharmacologist. I'm sorry,
neuropharmacologist.
neuropharmacologist. And if we continue on, here on the next slide here at the University of Utah, we acknowledge by agreement with the tribes that the land we work on, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. We go on to the next slide. Our goals for today, at the end of this session, you'll be able to assess values, goals, and understanding of mentees, state and align the expectations of mentor and mentee, and foster independence. It feels a bit aggressive for 45 minutes to fit all this in, but we hope that it will get you started at least on thinking about these topics. Next slide. So we're hoping to just for a minute or so, and maybe people could throw stuff in the chat or holler out loud. If you want to tell us who you are professionally and personally, but more important to us, I think, is what do you want to get out of this session? When we finish today, what would have been a success? What it's all about for you? So unmute and holler or throw stuff in the chat. And I'm sorry to say you are going to have to participate today. So you can turn off your camera, but you can't escape. We've got 31 people on this Zoom. Surely people are thinking about something they want to learn.
Okay, we have some things now. Someone is starting their postdoc and they want to ensure they start their new relationship with their advisor on the right foot. And someone else wants to be a better mentor to undergraduate and Master of Science students. So I think we have both sides of the mentoring dyad, right? We have people who want to be good mentors to the people who are in their groups, and we have someone who's new to a group and wants to think about how they might mentor up more effectively or what they should look for.
Learning how to mentor. Oh, I think people were just typing. There's a ton of stuff in there now. So these are fabulous. So finding a mentor, keep it in the professional workplace, keep it going, learning how to mentor students well and foster productivity, better strategies to make the best from my interaction with my mentor, seeking mentorship outside your career, and starting to mentor undergrads. I love it. So we're all similar. We seem to be on a similar page of I want to be a better mentor and also I want to be a better mentee. And I think today we'll talk a little bit about both of those. Let's keep throwing stuff in there. This is fabulous, but we're going to continue on and get started. So one of our goals for UCAN, but also just one of my goals in general, is this idea of building a mentoring culture. This started from the idea of building a coaching culture, which is the idea of working in a place where everybody, all faculty, but ideally all of everybody, have training and use mentoring skills in everyday interactions to facilitate continuous growth and development of colleagues and trainees. It's a bit of a broader view of mentoring, saying being a mentor isn't just I have this official relationship with someone, say, working on science, and I'm their mentor and I'm making them better, but rather that you can kind of put on that mentoring hat in everyday interactions. And there's evidence that this improves morale, engagement, satisfaction, and retention. It accelerates leadership development and causes actual succession planning. You get stronger and more cohesive teams and increased individual and organizational learning. And I just sort of say, don't you want to work in a place that's welcoming, where continuous growth and development is valued? And so that's kind of our idea behind doing mentor training and helping mentors, is just sort of just inhabiting mentoring as your way of life. We can go on to the next slide. I saw this, golly, almost 20 years ago now, in a letter to the Journal of Cell Science, where someone said, science is ultimately a deceptive effort to get smart, naive, and idealistic youth to join the ranks of a powerless, poor, and exploited labor force. It really caught my attention because it made me so sad. I thought, this person has not had good mentors. And that, I've been working on mentoring for like 30 years. And this really caught my attention as something like, okay, there's a real need for mentor training because mentors can cause harm. And so if we go on, click again. We see mentoring as a reciprocal relationship. The mentor is someone who brings perspective, experience, knowledge, and a network. There's some kind of shared path, and they understand kind of how to make progress on that path. But the mentee doesn't just show up and say, mentor me, make me great. The mentee brings their agenda, and they bring their goals, and they follow up with reflection and advancement of the goals between meetings. So you're not just an empty vessel getting filled up. You're coming in with things that you want to accomplish, and your mentor is someone who you can work with to come up with a way to make that happen.
Yeah, I would just going back to some of the chat items. I think that's critical because some of the individuals, some of you who, we all get mentored and mentor others. And so I think thinking about, what is our role as a mentee? What do I need to bring to the table to, someone wrote about kind of prolonging that relationship and making sure that relationship is successful for you with a mentor is not just coming and expecting them to fix you or to tell you what to do, but really bringing your side of the equation to that meeting. So,
and I'm just looking at Julia's balancing independence whilst making optimal use of mentorship. I think that is sort of the core question. I think that we're talking about today is how do you, as a mentor, foster that independence and allow people to do their own thing, but also have them recognize your value. And then as a mentee, how do you ensure that you're not just following directions? If we next. So when I think about mentoring, it works best when it's approached intentionally and professionally, based in ground rules, trust, ethics, and commitment from both the mentor and the mentee to a shared goal. So we're going to talk about some shared goals and also this idea of intentionally and professionally being a mentor or a mentee. And I think when I started some decades ago, mentoring was sort of a new concept. I think there'd been mentoring forever, but people were starting to kind of go, oh, probably people need mentors. And it was much less organized than it is now and much less thought about those ethics and ground rules. And so I think that's a big advancement and something that I am passionate about making sure people implement. We'll go on to the next slide.
Oh, so I'll take over.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm the green dots. Harriet's the purple dots, in case you wonder how we know that. Which Harriet introduced me to, which is a wonderful way when you're tag teaming with someone. But we just want to acknowledge that, really we developed this presentation based on curricula from the CIMMER curriculum, which is CIMMER is the Center for Improvement of Mentored Experiences and Research. And they have mentor training for biomedical researchers. They have mentor training for postdocs and graduate students on how to mentor up. So I would argue if you have an opportunity to complete CIMMER-based training, it's really useful in improving your mentoring skills. We actually are moving to requiring it of all of our faculty who are going to be on training grants, that they have to have completed formal CIMMER-based mentor training. And there's a link to the CIMMER project there. But I just want to acknowledge that what we're going to talk about today is based on that curriculum. So this is just totally Kristen. This is my approach and things I think about in terms of mentoring, and just as kind of foundational then for the different competencies that the CIMMER curriculum has. And so on the left, this triangle is from the Arbinger Foundation, and the Arbinger Foundation is kind of a conflict resolution approach, but really spends a lot of time. Can you see my cursor moving? Yeah.
Yes.
Saying we spend too much time up here, typically at the top of the pyramid, trying to correct other people and dealing with things that are going wrong. But the Arbinger approach is that actually we should be spending most of our time in the bottom of this pyramid, from the very bottom, dealing with ourselves and where we're coming from as mentors or mentees, as the case may be, and getting out of the box. There are 4 boxes: I'm better than, I'm worse than, I need to be seen as, or I deserve. And so how those mindsets can then influence how we interact with others. So really thinking about how do we take care of ourselves, and how do we put ourselves in a place where we're really working as mentors for the best interest of our mentees, and how do we build that relationship and listen and learn from them and teach and communicate, as is our role as educators. And then we end up spending very little time or much less time trying to deal with things that are going wrong because we've helped things go right. And so I just kind of use this as a foundation as I'm thinking about how I'm going to mentor someone. And this is just one of my favorite quotes, as well as I love Oriental Puppies on the right from Georgia O'Keeffe. And what strikes me about this is she wrote, "Still in a way, nobody sees a flower really. It is so small, we haven't time. And to see takes time, like to have a friend takes time." And I think I apply that to my mentoring. To have a mentee takes time, and to see that individual and what their values and their aspirations are, and to really build that relationship, listening and learning, takes time. And so one of the fundamental questions, if somebody approaches you about being a mentor for them, is whether you have the time to give to that person. And that's the very first decision I think we all have to make, is whether I have the time and the bandwidth to be able to effectively mentor this individual. Because as Harriet said, if we don't, we can actually do damage, especially I think for students who are young at a formative phase of their development as young adults, that we need to be sure we're in the right place and able to give them the mentoring they need. So anyway, I bring these up because for me, these are foundational. That sense of, do I have enough time, and really focusing that I need to understand this person, I need to learn about them, I have to have a relationship of trust with them in order to teach and communicate and help them where they want to go, so that I'm not getting frustrated in dealing with things going wrong in our relationship. So then we move into the SIMMER competencies, which there are a couple more, but we've broken them down into 6 competencies for effective mentoring. One is assessing values, goals, and understanding. Where is your mentee, especially like in a laboratory setting or research? Like, what do they know? What don't they know? What are we assuming? But also their values and goals that are going to underlie some of their professional and personal development while you're mentoring them. Second one here is fostering independence. How do we get them to the point where they move on and become successful, independent scientists or professionals? And then stating and aligning expectations, which is so crucial to making sure that we're all on the same page and not working at odds with each other. Underlying those 3 broad competencies are 3 that we feel really underlie all 3 of those and are important for all of them. And those are these foundational competencies of effective communication, addressing equity and inclusion in our mentoring and other relationships, and promoting professional development. So we're going to talk briefly about these 3 foundational competencies first, and then we'll go into these 3 broader competencies. And I'm on my laptop and I can see if new chat comes in, but like I got stuff spread all over a very small screen. So if you have a question for me and I talk very quickly, please just shout out, "Excuse me," and I can stop and we can chat. So the first of those kind of foundational competencies is maintaining effective communication. And it's, the SIMMER curriculum talks about the fact that it's a key element of any relationship. Mentoring relationship is not an exception. If we aren't communicating effectively and modeling effective communication for our mentees, then it's going to hurt the mentoring relationship. So we can't just say that we know good communication when we see it. We have to really think about what is good communication, what is effective communication, and take time to practice those skills. So I'm a late admit to the UCAN coaching internal network. Harriet was so gracious as to let me take the coaching training. And I think the coaching training has been so important for my development as a mentor, even though I had been mentoring for a long time. I mean, I can talk forever. I can talk at people, but I mean, the coaching training really drives home the idea of active listening. How do I simply sit and listen and not tell? Just sit and listen and reflect back what I'm hearing, facing the speaker, maintaining eye contact, speaking with someone and being attentive and being present, keeping an open mind, not judging, not jumping to conclusions, but again, really building that relationship and listening and hearing what the mentee is saying to me. Don't interrupt, don't impose solutions. We have the phrase in UCAN of quagestions, where you kind of ask a question, but it's really a suggestion of what they should do at the same time, instead of just asking a question to allow the individual to clarify their own thinking. And so we need.
Can I example the quagestion?
Yes.
Do you think you should is a good quagestion.
Yes.
Or a bad quagestion.
You think you should take this class, or right, instead of just really thinking about, or do you think you should get this degree versus another one? And those are skills that it's really important that we practice and think about. So, and then just over here, being courteous, considerate, correct, be concrete in our communications, be as complete as possible, don't leave information out, and concise, like don't drone on and on and on. But I think the active listening side, as mentors, we often feel we have to fix the problem and fix the person and answer their questions. And this ties in then why it's so foundational to developing independence, is giving our mentees the space to also think through and work through their issues with us asking clarifying questions and listening intently without giving them the answers and telling them what to do. So that's maintaining effective communication. And this can also have to do with establishing, written expectations as to regularity of meetings, how you're going to communicate by email or Slack channels or whatever means of communication are acceptable. And having those written down is a good way of kind of formalizing how we're going to communicate with each other. So moving on then to addressing equity and inclusion. So, I mean, I think at some level, we're all females in male-dominated fields. So we've benefited and probably also been hurt at some level by a lack of diversity and having to address diversity issues. It's a range of dimensions, right? Then those bring both challenges and opportunities for any mentor-mentee relationship. So now just talking about the fact we are going to be different from our mentees, even if we, are from the same culture or have the same skin color, same ethnic background and so on, we're still different. And so we shouldn't at any level be assuming things just based on how we think we align with the characteristics of our trainees or our mentees. So really learning to identify, reflect upon, engage with how you're different than your mentee and what that may mean in terms of your relationship, and also learning from them kind of what they bring to the table based on their background, whatever, differences they bring to the table from you is important so that you really understand that individual. And also sometimes sharing where you come from as a way of kind of helping them understand how you might see the world differently than they're seeing it. So I think that's important as well. And we can't avoid it. We have to be able to engage with diversity issues and equity issues as mentors in order to most effectively mentor our trainees. So we should recognize the biases and prejudices that we might bring to the mentor-mentee relationship. Think about concrete strategies for addressing issues of diversity in that dyad and in your group as a whole. Again, engaging in conversations about diversity with the mentees, and think about how, I saw the article you cited about how to 100 hours of mentoring or whatever to get girls into biomechanics and STEM, right? I think we have to recognize how influential we are about our mentees' decisions, whether to commit to careers that we're in. And so how we interact with them and help them see themselves in that type of career path is important, especially if they're not feeling that there's equity and inclusion, and how can we help them navigate those waters? And then finally, the third of those kind of underlying competencies that touch on all of the other three is our requirement or our obligation to promote our trainees' professional development. So our goal, right, is to enable the mentee to identify and achieve both academic and professional outcomes. So it's not just completing their classes, getting them through the program. I always tell my students, the PhD is not the end. And I'm sure their parents have told them that. Being in school is not a job. The goal is whatever the career aspiration is and what you're ultimately going to fulfill. So how do we help them define for themselves what those are and meet those? So not just simply getting the degree or getting the research done in our group or what have you. So the learning to do the disciplinary research, or for Harriet, probably learning to how to anesthetize a person and intubate them effectively, those kind of, clinical or research technical skills, disciplinary knowledge, and so on is an important outcome in our relationship with our mentees. But there are lots of others, right? So we have to think about the transferable skills that they might, communication skills, problem solving, teamwork, resiliency, leadership skills, all kinds of, teaching, pedagogical skills, entrepreneurial skills, depending on what might ultimately be, what is it, the Japanese term, their ikigai, right? That place where what they're passionate about, what they're good at, and what society will pay them for to do come together to lead to a fulfilling career down the road. And so really we're helping them navigate and learn a lot about themselves so they can define who they see themselves as in the future as a professional, and then promote the developmental path towards that. So 2-minute reflection on these kind of initial foundational aspects, which are maintaining effective communication, addressing equity and inclusion, and promoting professional development. Which of these do you find most challenging to implement in mentoring relationships? So you can yell out or put it in the chat. Maintaining effective communication, Sarah said. Do you want to share what you find, what's most challenging for you in that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you so much so far. This has been really wonderful. For me, I think it was sort of mentioned in the chat, we have so many competing responsibilities as early career faculty, and that email's constantly going off to stay really focused in a meeting, staying present to my students. I've really tried to turn off the computer screen, put the phone away. It's so easy to be distracted or to even just start thinking about a response while they're still talking. I think all of those active listening, I don't know, keys. That's just, I think, and as I start to have more students to balance and mentor, that I can see that even becoming more of a challenge.
Yeah, I hear you. It is so difficult. And this is what I struggle with. I think the more we can practice, I applaud you for turning computers off, turning our phones off, do not disturb. Maybe it means we go for a walk with our mentee or something where we can be away from all of the distractions and everything, is really, really hard. Harriet, do you have more thoughts besides that we hear you? And
yeah, I think that is, I love that. I struggle to reach when I'm too deep down the rabbit hole. Yep. And I like to be hands off, but then I need to reach out. I think these are crucial things, and maybe it would be worth going on to the next one, which is sort of the opportunity to address these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Any others? I mean, it seems like that's pretty much a difficult one. So Harriet goes next.
So we talked about maintaining effective communication and not, coming up with an answer while you're listening and being present. And so I think we're going to dive now into the first of those competencies, which is assessing understanding. We add in values and goals because I think you can't assess understanding unless you understand what they're trying to do. But the idea behind assessing understanding is making sure the person you're mentoring understands what the content is for what they want to do. Like, hey, here's my goal. I'm going to help you get to that goal. Here are the components of it. This is like what it means. And then what's the process? Like, how do you get through this world? What are the pitfalls you're going to run into? So just making sure that they understand what they are in for and what they've elected to do in a way that will make them more successful, I think. And then if we click one more, the reason we added values and goals is this idea that the mentor and the mentee share a common path, but it's not the same path. And so it's really easy as a mentor to go, oh, yes, I know the answer. I know how they can get to be successful because I'm going to make them the more successful version of me because they're not going to make the mistakes I did. But they're not trying to be you. They're trying to be them. And so really understanding who are you and what do you want to accomplish is important. And I would say it's an important first step in a mentoring relationship because if their goal doesn't align with something you can help them with, you might say, hey, I love your goal. I don't think I'm the right person. Let me connect you with someone who might be better for you. And I'm so glad effective communication came up first because I think this idea of coaching as asking questions, this idea of waiting to answer, of finding out what's going on with them. Under assessment to me is not just I'm going to look at you and make judgments of you, but it's I'm going to look at you and try to understand you by asking you questions. So now we're going to go to a little practice, and we're going to do a practice with everybody here. I'm going to turn off, we'll turn off the slides while we do it, but let me go through it. So this is sort of a practice in assessing values, goals, and understanding. And I'm going to say, this is really fundamentally coaching, but we think of it as putting a coaching hat on at the start of any coaching engagement. So someone I'm hopeful will volunteer to share a current challenge or goal. A real one is best. And then someone else will volunteer to be the mentor and they get to assess the values and goals and understanding. So this is just that assessment phase. What's going on with you? What do you want to achieve? Whatever. And you're allowed to do only these 4 things. Listen, reflect, ask questions, and summarize. There's no advice. There's no solutions. This is really hard because when someone says, I'm struggling with this, it's so hard not to go, well, have you thought about doing this? Rather, you need to understand what it is. And my example of this is, I have a really hard time saying no. That's one reason I love the Power of a Positive No book. And the reason I have a hard time saying no, I finally figured out was because everything is interesting to me. And so everything seems important. So my husband said to me when I was early career, I can't stand this anymore. We're going to make a list of priorities. And if someone asks you to do something, I don't care how interesting it is. If it doesn't fit your priorities, don't do it. And I was like, yeah, I've got the answer. And then people started coming to my office and saying, I'm having trouble saying no. And I was like, oh, I've got the answer. I'm so excited. Everything's interesting. And they would look at me like I was nuts. And they would say, no, I want to say no. This is not interesting to me. I'm just afraid that if I say no, I won't get future opportunities or I'll get fired. And I was like, I never thought about that. And so now when someone says I'm having trouble saying no, I go, tell me what's hard about it, rather than let me tell you how to fix it. So we're going to turn off the slides for a minute so we can see everybody. And I am just going to share the rules in there. You can, and I'm going to ask, is anybody willing to be the mentor or the mentee? It's scary.
I could be
Olivia's your.
Olivia,
You'll be
which
what?
one?
well, I can do either. I do have some thoughts on mentee.
Okay. Asala, are you also volunteering and that's why you put your camera on?
Yeah, I can be either one. Like, I'm happy to. Yeah.
Someone's got to make a decision.
Okay, I'll be the mentee then.
Olivia's going to be the mentee. Asala, you're going to be the mentor. So you got 1 minute, Olivia, tell us all what you're doing. Everybody else just watch and listen and see what you learn.
Okay, so this is actually kind of related to what we've just been talking about. I am just finished the first year of my postdoc. I am aiming for an academic career, going for a faculty position. I do have a hard time saying no, and generally take on too many projects, and that's mostly because I am just interested in things and find everything exciting. I'm also in an environment where I'm given a lot of freedom, and it's very yes and everyone's always excited. You have an idea, they're like, okay, let's do it. And so I now have 4 projects,
Wow.
plus everything else that comes with a postdoc. So I think I'm just struggling to try to balance things out and find where I need to say, okay, no, I have to stop.
Okay. So um, I'm 4th year PhD, so you definitely are ahead of me, but I'm thinking like about this situation as also Harriet, she mentioned like she prioritized, like she have her aim.
So I'm just going to say the rules are you can listen, reflect, ask questions, and summarize. You cannot give advice.
Oh, okay. Is it just I cannot advise? Is it just like so?
Your job is assessment and asking her questions to find out more about what's hard about this.
Okay. Okay. So you said you have 4 projects right now, right? And which one is your most important one to focus?
Uh, hmm. I guess the one that's, well, I suppose the first one that I've started, and the one that I already have data analysis going for. So I'm working on doing an analysis of PET MRI to look at the relationship between mechanical loading and bone metabolic activity. And so I've had that data since I started, and it's just been kind of dragging on because of other things that I've been trying to do.
Okay. So how much time you should spend on this project separate of the rest of them?
I think I should be spending about 50% of my time right now on that. Especially right now, I have 2 other fellowship applications due this month, so I do have to spend some time on that as well.
Okay, cool. So do you have any other people to help you for the rest of those 3 other projects?
We do have a team. I think some of the projects have been delayed because we haven't been able to find a scanner. And so I need to remind my PI, he said he would be helping with that. And then just some delays on getting certain materials. And we have an admin assistant who's working with that. The other projects, I'm supposed to be just trying to get those up and running. And I think I just maybe need to get the ball rolling of reaching out to say the group that's supposed to help us develop our cohort for our chart review. So maybe I can reach out to them, and then the ball is in their court, and make some progress there.
So right now, do you think like you are spending half of your time on the first project that is your priority and the rest of your time on those 3 projects, or is it feeling more you spend more time on those 3? I just want to see how you feel about your timing management.
I think I've been spending actually most of my time in the last 2 weeks just on fellowship applications, which has been a bit frustrating. So I think if I can balance that out a bit more to be focusing on the first project, and then maybe find 10 to 15% of my time to get started on the other ones.
I'm going to stop us there because we have some limited time. Thank you both. Can we get a round of at least virtual applause for people Olivia and Assault, really fantastic of you to put yourself out there like that.
Both.
Just phenomenal. And Olivia, I'm going to ask you, how did it feel to you?
I think that was helpful. I think the questions made me, or helped me think about things, and it was good to get someone to just reflect back, and just so that I could sort of talk things out. You know, I felt like I was kind of coming up with the solutions, and that's what we want.
Yeah. Asal, how did that feel for you?
That feels like I get more information from her. That feels like I like my mind try to mapping around how she's working and how she's project going on. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really great. I mean, I think just things that I sort of see from this, and I'm just gonna give you some of my thoughts on this, just because so I can hand it off to Kristen and we can keep moving because there's so much to talk about. But I think it was really hard for you, I noticed, not to try to solve the problem. And I think this is true for all of us. And this is true for me. And so you did a nice job of going, okay, Harriet said I can't solve the problem. So how can I kind of dive in deeper? And I think the really valuable question you asked was sort of like, which of these projects is most important? And the reason I know that was the best question, or the key question, was Olivia went, I have to think about that. And I think that really brought your mind to, and then you kind of got into, well, this thing has been dragging on and I need to put some time into it and just finish it. And then I'll have time for these other things. So I think that was a really valuable thing, that you helped her get to the solution on her own. And so I'm just going to say, I put up our workbooks. We've got some worksheets in there for sort of working on these asking questions. It's really hard to ask questions. It's really hard to be curious. And but you've made a start, and hopefully now you'll all be kind of thinking about how to do this in your mentoring experiences. And honestly, if you're you may think about approaching your PI with a question rather than with, hey, could you remember to do this thing for me? Sort of be curious rather than asking for something. Who knows? All right, I am going to hand it back to Kristen.
All right, I will go back to sharing. Can everyone see the screen? Yeah, and thank you for volunteering, because that's not easy. And I saw a thumbs up that, you know, that kind of learning to ask questions and not fix the problem is so central to kind of changing how we interact with others. So the second competency that we're digging into now is fostering independence, right? So, and this questioning allows the mentee the opportunity to become more independent. We're not solving every problem. We're not answering every question. We're helping them learn how to think through and become independent. Often, though, we don't define what the mentee already knows, what they value, right? So neither the mentee hasn't really thought about which project is the most important. They just feel like they have everything on their plate. And as a mentor, we don't know what their values are, where they want to go, where their aspirations are. And therefore, we may not have a good sense of even how to help them become independent, because we don't know what they want to become independent in. So that's a huge aspect of this. So we have to define what independence looks like and develop skills to foster independence in our trainees. So, you know, again, appreciating the important role that we play in the development of our trainees. So not just simply teaching them particular research or laboratory skills or clinical skills, but really kind of even how to think about themselves as a professional and how they can discern where it is they want to be in terms of their professional life. How do we build their confidence, right? How do we encourage rather than knock down our trainees? They're going to make mistakes. That's part of learning. We know that's going to happen. So how do we make them see those as growth opportunities? And again, help them define where it is they want to move to and be confident in their ability to achieve that. We're going to have to think about different approaches. Not everybody learns the same. as a new mentor, I'm fortunate I had the trainees I had because I sucked. I think it's good. They still talk to me. I still send Christmas cards and we still see each other on occasion because I thought everybody would be mentored the way I had been mentored, which fortunately worked for me. And I had an awesome mentor, but I had two trainees who had very different needs and how they needed to be mentored through their PhD, both equally capable of getting a PhD and becoming successful scientists, but I didn't vary my approach at all. And fortunately, I went to a meeting where somebody with a background in business talked about the fact that different people needed different management styles. And I was like, oh, that's earth-shattering news. So we need to think about how do we kind of individualize our approaches, and that's really having to understand each mentee, and then how do we establish trust between ourselves and our mentees. And I think, somebody put in the chat about sometimes as a mentee we get so far down the rabbit hole we don't know how to come out and seek the mentorship we need. I think there's also this issue of, do we feel safe, psychologically safe? And do I feel that there's trust with my mentor that I could go to that person with the most absurd question coming out of my mouth and I would feel supported and that I could work with them? So as mentors, how do we build that relationship of trust? Again, kind of that foundational aspect of the Arbinger pyramid. How do we build psychological safety in our group that when our trainees are at their worst and really struggling, they feel safe to come to us to get guidance and to get mentoring from us? And then, so we create an environment where they aren't afraid to articulate their career goals, their aspirations, what they're thinking of at that time, and their creativity, and so on. And I think the things that can come out of that kind of freedom to explore are remarkable. And I'll just cite quickly, because I know we're running out of time, my last PhD student. So I'm a neuropharmacologist. We study drugs in the brain. I'm a behavioral pharmacologist. And my trainee is now working in Tanzania for a popo, and they train rats how to detect tuberculosis in sputum samples and landmines. And so it's fascinating. And she is now running a group that's moving to Turkey to train rats to find survivors in earthquake rubble. That's not who I am as a scientist or whatever, but she had the freedom really to explore very broadly how she might want to apply her skills that she learned in the course of her dissertation. And I'm just incredibly proud of that, right? That she felt she could pursue that kind of path. But I had to learn a lot about who she was. It's not that there weren't frustrations at times, because she was figuring out who she was and how do we align what I need from a laboratory business standpoint and her PhD degree with where she saw herself going in the future. So I think, again, really laying that foundation of trust and everything is important. And then based on that, the last one is aligning expectations. So the ideal is this, the mentor and the mentee, our expectations are aligned and they're explicit and they work, versus being misaligned, which can create frustrations, or being in totally opposite directions, in which case there's going to be maximal frustration in the relationship. So we have to have a shared understanding of what each person expects from the relationship. And this is why establishing mentoring expectations, mentor-mentee expectations, or compacts at the beginning of the relationship. So what you expect as a mentor, or what you expect from the mentor as a mentee, is clearly articulated. It's written down. You've discussed it as a dyad. You've signed off on it. And so you can return to that document if things seem to be going awry or what have you, and focusing everybody back on, here are the goals. Maybe goals have changed over the course of the student's first few years, which can happen. And so now we have a misalignment and we have to realign. So problems that we see often arise from misunderstandings about the expectations. And again, they can change over time. So annual review of a mentor-mentee compact or statement of expectations is really a great way to make sure everybody's on the same, both members of the dyad are on the same page, And that will facilitate the communications. And it's kind of a formal way to kind of stimulate those conversations, which if we don't do regularly can be problematic. So I strongly encourage that kind of documentation. So as mentors, we might think my mentees shouldn't have any expectations of me. I know what I'm doing, but in fact, they should have expectations of us, and we should know what those are. We need to know, kind of, again, assess their knowledge and skill level and adjust our expectations accordingly, establish those expectations, clearly communicate them with each other, and think about the goals, like even shorter term goals every semester or every year. How are we meeting those expectations and using that as a format for the mentor-mentee relationship? So we have a quick case study, I don't know, 4 minutes, but maybe just read through this. And then if people could shout out some answers to the questions as to kind of what are the main themes in this. I'll give you 1 minute to read. Okay, what do people think? What is the, sorry, let me get back to my slide.
Feel free to start emoting or expressing while she's getting the slide back up. You can probably all remember something about it.
There we go. So what's the problem here? I mean, why is this, what's happening here?
I see poor communication and frustration in the chat. Trust is one of the issues. So perhaps the mentor isn't reading this simmer project. Definitely a communication issue.
So where's the communication? Is there just one communication issue here, or are there more than one? So it seems like, I mean, Dr. Sandstone, as the overall head of the group, isn't really communicating well with his research staff, right? Who he's expecting to train. And I think when we talk about getting more and more mentees, if we imagine a hierarchical mentoring structure, we have to make sure we're communicating with those individuals who are going to be mentoring new people in the group or what have you, and that we're taking time to have the trust there that they felt they could come. This individual didn't feel that they could come and speak about the issues.
I think this goes along with something in the chat as well, because I'm going to say Dr. Wadsworth has not asked for very much from her mentor either, right? So,
yeah. And also the issue, the communication issue between Dr. Wadsworth and Dr. Anderson, and maybe a respect issue in terms of whether Dr. Wadsworth is willing to take mentoring and guidance from Ms. Anderson, which seems like Dr. Wadsworth is, or Dr. Sandstone is expecting. So we'll stop there. just a whole bunch of mentoring resources for you to have. And any last questions? Stop my
And I
share.
think we shared our slides with you already. Okay, good.
Yes. And thank you, Harriet, for putting all the resources in the chat.
It's my favorite thing, getting to add things to the chat.
Thank you, Kiara, for the hand clap. Well, we hope it's just a start of things to think about and, working. If you have the opportunity to do the simmer training or other mentor training, the more you do, the better, the more opportunities you have to practice those skills. So, and thank you for having us, for inviting.
Yes, this was really fun.